நார்வே நாட்டின் முன்னாள் அமைச்சர் இலங்கை அரசுக்கும் விடுதலை புலிகளுக்கும் இடையே சமரசத்தை ஏற்படுத்தி இலங்கை இனப்பிரச்சனைக்கு தீர்வு காண 10 ஆண்டுகள் சமரச தூதுவராக பணியாற்றியவர் எரிக் சோலைம் அவர்கள் தற்போது உலக பொருளாதார ஒத்துழைப்பு மேம்பாட்டு அமைப்பின் மேம்பாட்டு உதவிக்குழுவின் தலைவராக செயல்பட்டு கொண்டிருக்கிறார். சமீபத்தில் ஜெனீவாவில் நடந்த ஐநா மனித உரிமை கவுன்சில் கூட்டத்தில் இலங்கை தொடர்பான தீர்மானம் நிறைவேற்றப்பட்டிருக்கிறது. அந்த தீர்மானம் தொடர்பாக நம்மிடம் பேசுவதற்காக பிரான்ஸ் தலைநகர் பாரிஸில் இருந்து நம்மோடு ஸ்கைப் இணைப்பின் மூலம் தொடர்பில் இருக்கிறார் திரு எரிக் சோலைம். Mr. Solheim, thank you very much for talking to us. Let me begin with asking you about your general comment on the resolution passed in Geneva.
I believe this is a very positive event for Sri Lanka and a real watershed event. But for sure, the most important issue is that the content of the resolution is implemented. And I know that many Sri Lankans, in particular many Tamils, are a little afraid that it won't be implemented because there is a long black history in Sri Lanka of commissions which have been put down or resolutions which have been made but never have been implemented. So the proof of this pudding is with implementation, but if implemented, this is very positive.
Do you believe this resolution will bring change in the lives of Sri Lankan Tamils and will bring peace and justice to them?
This resolution alone cannot change everything in Sri Lanka. You have to add that there would be a strong need for a negotiation process between the Tamil National Alliance and the government to introduce a new governing system for the Northeast, to bring self-rule to Tamils in the Northeast, and that can only happen through talks. And for sure there is a strong need for economic and social development in the land. So many Tamils have left. There is a lot of poverty in the Northeast. So the resolution is one aspect of the long-term solution, but others are economic and social development and political devolution of power, self-rule.
Now, every step is being focused on reconciliation and peace. But who should be held responsible for the crimes committed against Tamils during the final stages of war?
There are two main bodies responsible for the crimes at the end of the war. One is the Sri Lankan government of the time, that is the Rajapaksa administration and their main military leaders. The other is the leadership of the Tamil Tigers and Mr. Prabhakaran. For sure, Mr. Prabhakaran and nearly all other leaders of the Tigers are now dead. So there is a kind of imbalance here, which means that at the present stage, since there are very few LTT leaders still alive, it will be a matter of the responsibility of the Sri Lankan government leaders, the Rajapaksa brothers, and some military leaders of the Sri Lankan army of the time.
Mr. Solheim, don't you think the resolution was diluted because of the stand taken by the Americans? The same Americans brought resolution against Sri Lanka last year.
Very, very clearly, both the United States, India, and all other actors have a lot more trust in the government of President Sirisena and Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe than they did have with the Rajapaksas. As long as the Rajapaksas were there, there was no trust whatsoever. Now there is trust, so both the Indians and the US and everyone was ready to find a compromise with the present government in Sri Lanka. But I think all actors will follow the implementation of the resolution very, very, very carefully, and there will be a huge disappointment and a very negative reaction from the US, from Europe, and from India if the government is not implementing what they are promised to implement.
What should the new government to do to reach out to the Tamils?
I'm for sure very aware that a lot of Tamils don't trust any Sinhala-dominated administration, and they're based on historical experience of so many commissions being established and then not delivering any facts. There is a lot of distrust. The only way of removing that lack of trust is for Maithripala Sirisena, Ranil Wickremesinghe, and the present leaders of Sri Lanka to show that they're trustworthy, and they can only show that by implementing what they have agreed in this resolution.
Mr. Solheim, you have acted as an interlocutor for more than 10 years, right? And you know very well about the Rajapaksa government style of functioning and their strategy. especially on the war. With that scenario, who do you blame for the loss of thousands of lives?
There is no way of denying that the main blame for the enormous atrocities at the end of the war, indiscriminately bombing Tamil civilians in the north, and also in very clearly killing civilians and innocent people after they have handed themselves over to the government. The main blame for this rests with the Rajapaksa brothers and a few other leaders of that administration. But I have to add that also the LTT leadership and Mr. Prabhakaran is to be blamed because they kept Tamils against their will in this small perimeter in northeastern Sri Lanka, and they had the offer of an organized end to the war, and if that offer had been taken up, tens of thousands of Tamils will today have been alive, and the lives of LTT cadres and Tamil civilians would have been protected. We are, by the way, setting out all this in a new book which will be launched now in October. It's called To End the Civil War, and which is setting out all experiences Norway had during the more than 10 years we were involved with the LTT leadership and with different governments in Colombo.
What should be the role of Sri Lankan Tamil parties now?
The Tamil National Alliance won an overwhelming victory in the last election in Sri Lanka, so they have a strong mandate from Sri Lankan Tamils to negotiate. Talks should be initiated between the government and the TNA. Mr. Sambandan from the TNA is now also, as you know, the official leader of the opposition in the parliament. So there is every opportunity to sit down and find a way of devolving power in a federal constitution of Sri Lanka. Adding to that, the new government need to implement what they promised through this Geneva resolution, because if after a year or two people see that, well, a lot of promises were made but nothing was implemented, there will be even more dissatisfaction.
Mr. Solheim, should Sri Lanka be penalized if they don't allow international judges on the panel?
If the Sri Lankan government do not implement what they have promised in this resolution with the main actors like with the US, Europe, India, etc., there will be a need for a strong reaction from the international human rights community and from Geneva.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on how the LTTE could have avoided the final war?
At the last few months of the war, we were in touch with Prabhakaran through different ways and offered him an organized end to the war, which would have meant that the LTT cadres and the Tamil civilians would have been registered by international authorities, an amnesty would have been given, and all the lives of both the cadres as well as the civilian would have been spared. This offer was made at a time when everyone knew that the government would win the war, that there was no way the LTT could sustain the war for more than a few more weeks a month, but the offer was rejected, unfortunately, by Prabhakaran.
How Tigers were so confident by refusing to end the war?
I believe that the top LTT leadership of the time lived in a kind of dream world with no real knowledge of what happened outside. They believed in some sort of miracle which would save them and the Tamils in this small Puthiya perimeter. So to me, it's an inexcusable historical mistake not to take such an offer. If they had taken the offer, they would have been still alive, and they will be able to fight with political and civilian means for Tamil rights in Sri Lanka. But I have to add that the fact that Prabhakaran did not accept this offer can, of course, never be used as an excuse for war crimes from the Sri Lankan government side.
Do you mean to say that Tigers were believing that India would stop the war at one point of time?
I think they believed in different miracles. I mean, remember, this was at a time when there was elections in India. they believed that a BJP electoral victory in India would change the situation in Sri Lanka. And of course, at the time, there was a good chance that the BJP would win the Indian election. At the end, it was won by Congress, but many people thought BJP would win. But however, even if BJP had won, it would have changed nothing in Sri Lanka at the time.
Mr. Solheim, how do you look at the role of India during the war?
Until a few months before the end of the war, India believed that there could be no military victory for either side. So India was a strong supporter of the peace process throughout. They did their utmost to be helpful to find a negotiated peace. But over the last few months, they thought that maybe the government can win, and there was no tears in Delhi for the Tigers.
Mr. Solheim, Rajapaksa brothers said they fought the war for India. Do you agree that?
This is the common view in Sri Lanka, that people tend to believe that if the sun by chance is rising tomorrow morning, India will somewhat be behind it. There's a huge exaggeration of the role of India. As we all know, others were providing the main weaponry to the government, not India. India may have provided some intelligence. I don't know about that. But at the end of the day, the Sri Lankan government fought and won the war, and the main providers of weapons were nations like China, Pakistan, Iran, not India.
Mr. Solheim, you are saying that India did not support Lanka militarily. How confident you are?
My view is that India were supportive of the peace process for the 10 years we were involved in that. They did their utmost to bring peace to Sri Lanka. But when close to the end, they understood that maybe the government can wipe out the Tigers. They had no objections to that happening, but they tried to intervene to reduce the suffering of Tamil civilians.
What should be the role of India at present?
I think the visit by Prime Minister Modi to Sri Lanka a few months back was very, very, very positive, and so it was a great event. He clearly spelled out his belief in federalism and strongly encouraged Sri Lanka to find a domestic solution to the problem within the framework of federalism. And I found that visit enormously helpful and positive. So I think India can, in many different ways, encourage Sri Lanka, both Tamils and Sinhala and Muslims for that matter, to find solutions involving devolution of power of federalism. I mean, if Sri Lanka from the very beginning had established a federal state as India did, there would have been no civil war in Sri Lanka.
Mr. Solheim, Tamil Nadu State Assembly passed a resolution demanding the federal government for pressurizing international inquiry. But the Indian government did not do so. Do you think it is right on the part of the Indian government to ignore the sentiments of 7 crore Tamils?
As you will certainly understand, I don't want to be involved in Indian discussions or in different views within the Indian communities. However, seen from outside, I think both Chief Minister Jayalalitha as well as Prime Minister Modi has in different ways, in a very positive sense, encouraged Sri Lanka to find a solution which will imply a federal state in Sri Lanka.
How do you look at the next 5 years down the line for Sri Lankan Tamils?
I think these 5 years are absolutely crucial for Sri Lankan Tamils. As you know, so many Tamils have left the island. To a large extent, also the better educated, the most dynamic have left. Those who remain many of them are having lots of traumas because of the war, also because of rape and torture and so many other ills which have befallen upon them. So there's now the strong need to turn this around, find a settlement for a federal solution or devolution of power to the Northeast with the government, and then start the reconstruction of the Northeast and making it what it was, one of the most dynamic, prosperous and hopeful places in the entire South Asia.
Mr. Solheim, do you believe reconciliation will happen in Sri Lanka given the bitterness among the communities?
I'm absolutely convinced it will happen. I understand it will take time. I understand it's not easy when you have got your anyone in your family killed or raped or tortured. It's not easy, but for sure it will happen.
Mr. Erik Solheim, thank you very much for talking to Puthiyathalaimurai. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good to speak to you.